Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Now, it's not very often that I get a live guest in the studio. Many are called, few will answer. I came across Alice Vye Henningway earlier on this year when she was down in Marbella promoting a book, her first novel. And it was one of those situations you go, yeah, well, okay, I'll go and see somebody who's written their first novel and it'll be about their life and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. And then you actually meet them and you suddenly realize that the person who has written this novel is highly intelligent, highly motivated, and is about to tell us all about what happens when you put your life on the page and then you light the blue touch paper and the rocket ship goes off. I'm delighted to say that joining me live in the studio is the author of, and I'm probably going to get this pronounced wrong, is it Nyika? The novel is called?
Nyika, I Love You.
Nyika, I Love You. Good morning to you, Alice. How are you doing today?
Hi, Giles. Very good, thank you.
Have you done radio interviews before? I'm just thinking to myself about this one.
A few.
A few? Right then. So give me a little bit about give me the Alice Vye Henningway 101, because this is where are you from? You know, whereabouts you actually the background to the book. I mean, where you're from, because I've always said that everybody's got a story in them, but few actually get around to writing it.
I'm actually born and raised in Zimbabwe, and I'm 8th generation African. And I've moved around the world from Bangkok to Berlin, and I've decided to settle down in Marbella because it's such a beautiful place and it's very peaceful. And
so, just a little bit about the book. So you were in Zimbabwe in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. When were you in Zimbabwe then?
From 1972 till 1999.
Right.
And then I moved to Cape Town, and then from Cape Town I moved to Berlin. That's
an interesting move. If you twin those two, Cape Town and Berlin must have been quite a culture shock.
What love can do.
Indeed. So tell me a little bit about the book then, and about, as I said before, there is this whole thing about, as I've always said, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got his story in them. So what was the spark to it, and why did you decide to write the book? And what do you think the art of writing itself is?
I do believe that everyone has at least one book in them. And writing is the art of listening to yourself, even when the world is unbearably loud. For Nyika, I Love You, I felt the story wouldn't let me rest until I gave it form. The land, the characters, the emotions, they were like, say, an orchestra in my head.
An orchestra in your head.
And it was time to conduct. And it was really important to me that Nyika herself had a voice in my story, because it's our story. It's more than a setting, it's a living, breathing presence. Its beauty, its struggles, its resilience. Nyika shaped my characters, and in many ways it shaped me too.
So, I mean, just sort of thinking about, is Nyika is a person? I mean, forgive my ignorance, Alice, because there's lots of it. But is Nyika is because people talk about Africa, and they talk about big sky and they talk about the land, and I've never been sort of further south than the edge of Sahara this end, so I haven't done Southern Africa, but people talk about the land, and it is part of the story. It is big land, it is big characters, that whole sort of landscape. So Nyika is a person what is that?
Well, Nyika was the name of the lady that is on the cover of my book, and she also was my nanny, and I prefer to say my second mother. But Nyika is a African word that is used from the north to south to the west of the east of Africa, and it means child of the wilderness and people of the land.
And is that in any particular language? I'm just trying to think, is that some...
It resonates with the whole of Africa.
Okay.
So it's and it's also part of our national anthem in Zimbabwe.
Ah, okay. See, You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
When you come to write a book, and you're putting stuff down on the page, and when it's a personal story, I do interview a lot of people who've written books, and so you have to put something of yourself on the page and emotionally. So with a work like this, I mean, how far, if you like, were you digging emotionally? I mean, how far did you sort of have to go with it, and how far were you willing to go with it? Because this is the first sort of novel that you've done. I mean, it must have been interesting, but at the same time, you've got to dig deep. You've got to go places perhaps you hadn't gone for a while.
That's absolutely true. And writing Nyika, I Love You was like pulling threads from an old weathered tapestry. Each sort of tug unraveled memories I thought were really long buried, but instead of falling apart, the story wove itself into like something new. Mm-hmm. Some threads were vibrant, full of joy and connection, while others were frayed, tangled with grief or loss. At times it felt like we're stitching together not just a story, but part of myself I hadn't realized was still unfinished. There were days the process left me utterly unraveled, and others when it felt like a kind of healing, like sewing up old wounds with a golden thread of understanding.
How do you write? I mean, because I'm always intrigued about how people write, okay? I mean, do you lock yourself away for days and go, right, today I'm going to do 10,000 words? Or do you set yourself targets? Do you lock yourself away? Or are you walking around and something will come to me, like you're in Berlin and you remember something, or you hear a conversation. Do you note it down as you go along and think a memory comes to you? Because if you sit and you think, I'm going to think about my childhood now, then you'll get this jumble of memories coming through, and none of it will be. I speak to lots of writers who go, I've spent 3 days in a cabin in the woods, and I've got as far as it was a dark and stormy night. Or do you feel? I always do I don't write novels. I mean, I write articles, and I always I do what I call a nifty 250, which is basically I will sit down and write rubbish, and some would say I don't change from there, but I will just start writing something just to get 250 words on the page, and it's like warming up for an aerobic session. Not that I know what that's like, but you get the muscle memory going, and from there you can start writing. Or do you? How do you write? I mean, how do you find the writing experience?
Well, my stories are inspired by true stories, so it's quite easy for me to gather that information. They're not fiction or science, like, you know what I mean?
It's not a fantasy novel.
Not
it's
a
not,
fantasy, yeah. So for me, I am very pragmatic and I'm very, very organized. So almost, I see the whole book and then I break it down into chapters, and then I just write a chapter per month. And I start writing at 9 a.m. I break for lunch. Then I write again after that. And I end like a normal business day.
And so it's the discipline of doing that. But of course you have a family, don't you? So I suppose you have to be disciplined because you've got this international sort of family going left, right, and centre, and there's got to be you've got to do that as well at the same time.
Who have also been my biggest supporters. They have cheered me on like unbelievably so, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And every small win, every big win, they've been right there by my side.
How difficult is it sort of showing, your kids, this is what, mum or your partner, this is what I've been working on? Because they must be on some point your easiest audience, but at some point your hardest audience as well, especially the teenagers.
I think that I haven't really addressed that question with them, and I'd like to for them to discover their book if they want to in their own time. And I was watching actually a interview with Obama, and they were interviewing about his books, and his daughters hadn't read his book either. So then I didn't feel like so bad.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So you got a publisher, yes, which must have been fun. And did you approach the publishers with the idea, or did you give the publisher, say, there it is, have a look at it? It's how many words is it, by the way, your book?
I don't know how many words, but it was about 365 pages.
That will do. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you give it to them fully formed, or did you say, I have an idea, do you want to pick up on this?
Well, it's actually quite a cute story and naive story, because I don't have anyone in my family that's ever written basically anything except a distant uncle. And so I didn't have anybody in the industry. So I was living in Dubai at the time, and I just Googled publishers in Dubai, and I found one. And then I located its address, and I drove out there, expecting in my romantic brain, like this shisha bar with this
guys in cream suits and the whole thing.
Yeah, and I arrived, and it was like a palace, and I was like, oh no, this is huge. And I kept on like going round and round the roundabout because I was too afraid to go inside. And eventually I worked up the courage, and I went in with my manuscript, and they said, we'll call you in 3 weeks. And then they called me, and they said, we have to send this to London. And they said, yes, we'd like to accept that. But I am not really pro publishing through a publisher. I think with today's modern technology and my second edit of the book, that self-publishing is a much better idea.
So you've gone back, haven't you, and you've re-edited
yes.
this. What were there some bits you needed? Did you want to add more? Did you want to change things? Do you think that... Because you must have read your own manuscript so many times that you felt like you were banging your head against the proverbial writing desk.
Yeah, that's true. I was so tired of reading this, but I'm sure a lot of writers go through that. But my husband was extremely helpful in this scenario. He helped me a lot with reading and rereading and rereading. But I wasn't satisfied with the edit that went out with the first edition. So therefore, I decided to tackle it myself and do it myself.
Did you? I mean, when you did that first manuscript and you cut it, is that the real hard thing? Because you've written so much and it means so much. It means a lot to you on an emotional level. Then you have to go back in and cut down some bits to make it smoother or more readable. Or is that what you're doing in the second edit? Do you think?
I decided I had to be ruthless. And I was ruthless. So I cut it down, and that was that.
Fair enough. So it went to publishing, and that's all great, and it comes out in book form. And what's it like when you get the package and you get that first copy and you open it up and you look at your words in print? Because people will say they when you see your book actually printed, with a front cover, what's that feeling like?
It's your first validation. But I expected it to feel bigger than I felt.
Right. It wasn't a life, because everybody said, my life changed. And No.
I was like, damn. So I think our level of success from human being to human being and how we look at our own success is a strange thing. So people say you're successful. How do you feel about, were you ready for this success, the book readings, the schedules, and da-da-da. So for me, success is a strange thing. It feels surreal and grounding at the same time, Mm-hmm. The readings have been incredibly moving in their own ways. For instance, the reading of Daughters of Africa was, say, raw.
And Daughters of Africa is a book. It was a book festival, or is it a book?
No, it was an event organized by women from Africa and the first lady of the Kenyan ambassador in Bangkok. So it was a lot of African ladies got together, and they asked me to read.
But there must be differences. So if you're reading in Africa and you're reading in London, that must be different.
Yeah, I struggled a little bit with my composure because of the Daughters of Africa reading, because the room carried so much shared history and emotion. And London, by contrast, reading felt less intense, but still deeply gratifying, more of a celebration than a reckoning.
So you're all for self-publishing. You're also for putting the word out yourself, isn't it? You've kind of done your own marketing on this one, and you've been busy doing that as well over the past. Tell me a little bit about how you marketed this thing, and also because it's not just you getting the book out, but it's also helping others. So tell me a little about the marketing and how you're going to help others with this one as well.
Yeah, I've done, as you said, all my own marketing, and this is where your network is so incredibly important. And so this interview with you, thank you, Giles, and also the connection to Linda Wooden and Angela Drury and Cindy from Grapevine, all here in Marbella, have an incredibly far-reaching network. And they helped me open so many doors. And then a guy friend of mine from Zimbabwe, Webb Shingas, and another lady called Yeva, they introduced me actually to Stacey Eckstein, the producer from LA.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, success and marketing and all that is never really a solo act. And I'm endlessly grateful to those who believed in me.
And you're getting involved in something called Save Valley Conservation. That's right, yeah? Or yeah,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that.
The Save Valley.
Save Valley, sorry.
No, don't worry. No, it's not a
accents
problem.
are always my thing.
Save Valley Conservancy is something that my father was the managing director of, and it was basically a cattle ranch before of 800,000 hectares, and then they transformed it to a conservation and reintroduced 14 different species and the biggest elephant translocation ever to take place in the world for African elephants. And we rescued like 567 elephant after driving them 900 kilometers. And as a child, that was my first lesson in logistics. So this was a huge conservation, and it created a lot of jobs for a lot of people in Zimbabwe. But I felt like my responsibility had to go further in my personal life. So I think being able to read and write is a privilege we often forget. And if I'm going to take my material for writing, even if it's my own life from Zimbabwe, I should give it back. And therefore we are... the Save Valley Conservancy is building a classroom onto a school, an additional classroom, and I'm trying to raise funds basically for that classroom to be built.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's Africa's always. I mean, I'm getting more and more fascinated by Africa. I had somebody on the show the other day who was in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, and which is obviously the West sub-equator thing, and he said, and I think that we tend to as Europeans we just do a broad, oh, it's Africa, it's all the news we ever get out of Africa tends to be very sort of negative, and so we have to be putting stuff back into Africa. I think that's really important. We don't think every time we think of Africa, we think of poaching or a famine or a civil war or whatever. That always seems to be a problem.
Yeah, that's why also this book is so positive, because a lot of Africa is also seen in race issues, which are relevant. And the story is a positive story to come out of Africa. And it shows really that love can conquer all.
Now, you mentioned that Stacey was over from Los Angeles, and I met her at a dinner.
Yes.
What's it? I mean, they came to you. This is the possibility of your novel being turned into a documentary, a film. What is the film? Tell me a little about the deal with the film, then.
Yes, it's to have your book optioned for a film is really an exciting possibility. It feels like it's in safe hands when it's with Stacey, because she's worked with major studios, and her last film was Lego 2, which shows her ability to create magic on a screen.
I mean, presumably it's not going to be Lego 3. This isn't going to be Lego in Zimbabwe. I can see it now. No?
In an animation, it actually could work.
It could work, I suppose, yeah.
No, she came and spent a week with me, and we worked intensely hard, and we went through the entire book, each scene by scene by scene by scene, so she could understand vividly exactly the whole storyline. Yeah. So
here we are, end of 2024. This book has come out. You've been all around the world promoting it. You've seen it lauded, applauded. Now you have to do another one. That's the problem. I mean, we talk about difficult second album syndrome for musicians. You're working on, and I'm just looking at your website. There's 2 or 3 other ones you're sort of bubbling away.
Yeah. But I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
I don't know. I seem to be on my path, which is, I think, supposed to be what I'm doing. So I'm not really worried about if the first one was better than the second one and the third. Just do what I have to do.
Well, listen, thank you for your time. I got it all planned out. No, don't be sorry. We've had a great conversation. If you want to check out the book, by the way, it is now available to order on the TRE virtual bookstore. We've put it up already since that conversation. Thank you, Julie. So they'll be able to, they'll be able to download, they'll be able to order the book from there. You have a website, don't you? So if people want to check out what you're doing and follow this quite incredible story, which we will be following, don't worry about that.
Thank you,
at TRE. Where's the best place to go to begin? What's your website address?
It's
in radio speak. That's my radio voice. What's the best place? Yeah.
AliceVyeHenningway.com.
Okay, well, go check out the book. Order the book, okay, and say you saw it here first on our own TRE website. Alice, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Giles.